1 second. I'm just trying to get Instagram up and running. Might have to redo Instagram. Come on, baby. All right. Looks like we might not get Instagram here. It says we're live. One second, everyone. We'll be right up and running. I do apologize. They don't make it easy to stream to multiple places. All right. Well, if you wanted to watch it on Instagram, I apologize. Hopefully I'll get this video posted later. Anyways, welcome to Notable Approvals. I'm attorney Amanda Shaffer. It's been a while since I've been able to do one of these videos. It's been pretty busy over here. So before I begin, quick reminder, don't forget to like us, follow us, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you are watching. If you like what you see, go ahead and hit that share button, that save button, and leave us a comment. Tell us what you like. And if you or anyone you know need an immigration attorney, our contact information should be scrolling across the bottom of your screen. So today I have a very interesting case and another important lesson to learn from this case. So in this case, a client who is a resident of or residing in Elmhurst, New York, which is in Queens, who is a native and citizen of Indonesia. He finally got his green card, and he had a little tricky path, which we're going to talk about. He entered, well, actually, we should start, well, we'll start there. Yeah. He entered the U.S. back in 2017, and he actually entered as an Asylee. And this was based on his father being granted asylum. His dad, initially also from Indonesia, entered the U.S. in 2011 with a B2 visa. And he filed for asylum within a year of entering the country. And his asylum claim was based on persecution as a Chinese Christian. His dad would get attacked by the native Indonesians when he was a child. Him and his family moved to all over the country to try to live their life and without any problems, but unfortunately they could not find a safe place. There was even a story where he used to get jumped a lot walking home from school. Kid ran at him with an ice pick, actually. And then once his dad built a house, they kept burglarizing the house, breaking into it. So the family moved, but they still own the house. And then a native Indonesian decided to take the property, and no one would help them get this guy out of their home. The police wouldn't help. So again, they continued to move, continued to have issues. And this was a very strong asylum case. I don't believe we did it. It was before my time as a lawyer, but we do have a lot of these types of Indonesian claims, and especially back then. So his case was approved in 2014 by the immigration judge. And at that time, our client, who was his son, was still living in Indonesia. And he was listed on his father's application as a derivative. So when you fill out the asylum application, it asks about your spouses and kids, and it says, are you including this person in, well, I guess he's not in the US. I apologize. I'm getting myself confused. You can include anyone in the US on the application. If they're not in the US, once you get granted asylum, you file something called a follow to join petition. And this is for asylees and for refugees. But essentially, it allows your immediate family, your spouse and minor children, unmarried minor children, to basically follow you to the US once you're granted and join you. And they get to enter in the status that you are in. So his dad's granted asylum in 2014. They file a file to join petition. He then has that granted in 2016 and enters the US as an asylee in 2017. Now, when you're an asylee and you're granted asylum, you have the option after 1 year of being an asylee to file for your green card. Now, this is different than if you're a refugee. A refugee is someone who is declared a refugee when they're outside of whatever country they end up relocating to. And they enter as a refugee. These are people you think of refugee camps and whatnot. They've already applied for refugee status and they don't pick the country they're going to. They're assigned a country. And then when they enter the US, they're required a year later to apply for their green card, or they lose their status and they're out of status. So it's a little different. Now, there are certain people who cannot get a green card when they get asylum. Very limited number of people. I'm not going to go into those details at this point. It's going to come up when I talk about hopefully some cases in the near future, because we're applying for that now. But what's important to know is that you have the option after 1 year of being an asylee to apply for a green card. There are people that go their entire life without ever becoming a permanent resident or a citizen or a U.S. citizen, and that's their choice. I don't recommend that. I highly suggest you get your residency and then your citizenship so that you're completely protected. Now, it can be an even bigger problem when you have a situation where you're either a derivative applicant or you have children or a spouse who are derivative applicants, because their status is dependent on your status. So you can get your green card while your kids or your dependents are still as asylees. But, and this is the big thing here, if the principal applicant for asylum, the person who signed the application, who it was based on, becomes a U.S. citizen before the dependents get their green cards, so they're still asylees, they lose their status as asylees. That's right. You lose your status. And this is, I've been practicing for 12 years. We've only had this issue come to us twice that I can recall, maybe a few more times. But it's a little, how do people find out? Well, they apply for their green card and then it gets denied. And that's exactly what happened here. This client, his father naturalized in 2020. He was still an asylee. He did not know the consequence that he could have applied for his green card prior to his dad naturalizing, or his dad could have waited. I'm sure he would have had he known. So then when he applied for his green card, either in 2020 or 2021, it got denied. And the reason for the denial was you're not an asylee. Your status goes away. Now there's one thing that can be done depending on what your status is, or what your relationship is, I should say. It's possible to file an alien relative petition, I think. But we're not talking about that now. I'm getting ahead of myself and complicated. That's what happens when I'm rusty from not doing these videos in a long time. So this client, he applies, gets denied. That's when he came to us. And there's luckily one way that it can be fixed. And that's called a Nunc Pro Tunc application. So essentially he had to refile for asylum as himself as the principal applicant, but it was based on his father's claim. So we still had to fill out the regular application, do everything as normal, but we had to include a copy of his father's application, his statement, his grant of asylum, all of that, and explain why the client didn't file within a year of entering the US, et cetera, et cetera. The client had an asylum interview. He was granted. Fortunately, it only took 8 months to get granted, which in 2022 was pretty good. I do think they're adjudicated slightly different. Is there a situation where he could not have been granted? This is immigration. There's always a situation. But the two Nunc Pro Tunc applications we filed that I can recall have been granted. So he's now an asylee in his own right. He's no longer a derivative asylee. He's a principal asylee. So technically, again, he could stay his entire life now without getting a green card. But he did decide that he wanted one. And he did file for one right after getting his Nunc Pro Tunc application. And it was granted about a year later. So this is not necessarily a super long video or super complicated case, but a lot of people do not know that if they are on their family, their parents or spouse's asylum application as a derivative, although they do get granted asylum status with the parent or spouse, if their parent or spouse naturalizes, so they become a U.S. citizen, before they go from an asylee to a green card holder, then they lose their asylee status, cannot get a green card based on the derivative asylee status, and need to file for asylum on their own behalf. So I always suggest that as soon as you're eligible, you file for your green card. If there are some situations where we might not recommend it, very rare. That's when you look at that bottom of our screen here and you give us a call. So you don't want that to happen. It's just a lot of stress for no reason, but fortunately it all worked out. And since he is granted as an asylee in 4 years from now, he will be eligible to file for his citizenship. One last thing I will say, another reason you might want to get that green card if you're debating it. When you're an asylee, you can't just travel outside the country. You don't need a work permit to work. You can work legally here, but you need to have it. You can't even renew your passport because that's technically going into your embassies, going back home, and you're not allowed to do that. So you have to get an asylee or refugee travel document. So every time you want to go out of the country, you have to do that. And while most countries in the world do recognize it, that you don't need to travel without a passport, I'm sure you're given a hard time in airports because a lot of the officers are not going to know what that document is. But more importantly, you're going to be limited in terms of travel because if you cannot get back into the country without a valid travel document. So it's just another incentive, but really you don't want to lose your lawful status here, and you then have to spend more money going back and doing the Nunc Pro Tunc. So that is really all for today. Final reminder, if you're granted asylum status as a derivative, get that green card as soon as possible. That would be 1 year from the date of grant. If anything, make sure the person who is the principal applicant or the reason you were granted asylum, the person whose claim it was, does not naturalize before you get your green card. Even if your green card application is pending, it doesn't matter. Once they naturalize, you're going to get denied. So that is all for today. If you have any questions or need a lawyer to represent you in your immigration matters, as I said, our contact information scrolling across the bottom of our screen. Don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're watching. Hit that share button, that save button if you found this video to be helpful or know someone who can. I do apologize for the beginning of the video. I'll try to cut that out in post, even though I don't really know what post is because I'm not a video editor. I'll do my best, guys. And leave me some comments. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see more of. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.